Hi, it's Frank Versace with Versace Real Estate, and today we're going to take a look at what happened with the Winnipeg real estate market for April 2018. Stick around. All right, let's take a look at the numbers and jump into the data for April here. According to the WinnipegRealtors MLS data, the headlines you're going to see in the news here is that April is down by about 1%. Now, this is good news over previous months because, as we remember from other videos, the market had started off a little slower this year, and now we're kind of in catch-up mode. So what we're finding with the spring market, things are starting to pick back up. The market's getting back on pace, down only 1%. What that means is last year we would have sold 1,300 units, 1,300 properties sold in the month of April. Well, this year we're at 1,283 units sold. So pretty much on par there with previous years. Now, what's happening year to date? Because that's a pretty good indicator as well. We had started off a little bit lower, but now again we're starting to catch up. So year to date numbers, we're only down about 6%. So so far year to date we've sold 3,511 units have sold in from January to the month of April, end of April. And last year this time, January to April, there was 3,730 properties. So just a very marginal difference there, about 6% change. Now, what about the absolute numbers of units sold for homes and condos? What was your chance of selling in the month of April? Well, for April here, we had 917 houses that sold in the month of April. And how does that compare to last year, 2017 in April? Well, we had 949 houses that sold in the month of April. So again, we're very much on par with last year's market, and last year's market was a pretty good market. So, we should be feeling positive about that. What about for condos? What was your chance of selling if you had a condo on the market in the month of April? Well, there was 174 units that sold in the month of April. So if yours was one of them, you were one of 174. And how did it look last year? Well, last year there was 165 condos that sold in the month of April. So actually we have a little bit of a bump in condo activity for this month over last year. But again, we're fairly on par with where the stats were for April 2017, which is a good sign. What about days on market? A lot of people say, hey Frank, how long is it going to take me to get my condo sold? And what's the trend? What's happening? Is it getting shorter? Is it getting longer? That's a good indicator in terms of what the market is doing. So let's take a look at DOM, days on market. One of the big questions that a lot of buyers and sellers want to ask their realtor in terms of the activity or the speed of the market. Well, for houses, for houses here, we've got 25 days. So it's taken about 25 days to get a house sold in the month of April. Well, what did that look like in February? Well, in February, it was 52 days to get a house sold. What happened in March went down to 29. What happened in April? Now we're at 25. So we can see the time it's taking to get a house sold is starting to come down, and that's because there's turning out to be a little bit more buyer demand in the spring months and more activity. What about for condos? Well, condos right now are sitting at about 42 days to get a condo sold. Now, what about in February and March? Well, February, it was 45 days to get a condo sold. Then what happened in March, it went to 54 days. So the time on market took a little bit longer to get sold in March, and now we're coming right back down to 42. So we went from 54 days in March to 42 days in April to get a condo sold. So that's a good sign, both as a buyer and a seller. It's nice to see that activity in the market. What about for highest price and lowest price? Because a lot of people like to see the diversity in the Winnipeg market. Well, in the month of April, there was a property sold. Highest property sold was $2.6 million. So that's a great top end for the Winnipeg market. And on the lower end here, we've got a property that sold for $68,000. So that just shows you the spread and the variety of properties that are available in the Winnipeg market. Now, what about volume change? Volume is basically the number of units sold multiplied by the price of each of those units. So you have X amount of homes that sell, times that by the sales price of those homes, and that gives us our total volume for the market. Well, so far in April here, we had $386 million worth of real estate that's sold. Now, how does that compare to last April 2017? Again, we're 384 million last April. So we're off very, very low, very, very minor change, 1% change. Again, we're pretty much on par with last year, and last year was a good year, as I mentioned. Now, if you're a seller or you're a buyer, a lot of times you want to know how many homes are selling above list, below list, at list, and that's a good indicator when you're going in for an offer, whether you're going to have to compete or not, or if you're putting your home on the market, whether you're going to receive multiple offers or not. And so let's take a look at those numbers. We've got here above, at, and below. So if you put your home on the market as a seller, or you were a buyer going in to put an offer on a home, what was the chance, what was the percentage of times that you were going to have to pay over list, above the list price? Well, 28% of the time that a home is listed for sale, it's selling over the list price. So again, if you're a seller putting your home on the market, kind of gives you an idea, about 28% of the time, you have a chance of getting more than you're asking for. But again, you got to be the shiniest apple in the bunch. You can't put your home on the market in as-is condition and expect to get over list. You've got to price it right. You've got to stage it right. You've got to market it right. You've got to have a great negotiator on your behalf as a realtor. And then when all the stars align, there you go, 28% of the time over list. What about at list? Well, about 8% of the time when sellers put their home on the market or a buyer goes in to make an offer on a home, 8% of the time they're paying exactly at the list price or receiving exactly at the list price. Now, here's the number that a lot of buyers like to see, but maybe not a lot of sellers like to see, and that's the below list number. So what's the percentage of times that the home will sell under the list price? Well, it's about 64% of the time when a home is listed for sale that it's going to sell under what the asking price is. Now, that might be very marginal underneath the asking price, but it's still less than what the seller was originally asking for. And so what we can see is that's a pretty good indicator. At or above list, we're about, a third of the time it's at or above list. And for a seller, that's great news, right? For a buyer, 64% of the time you're getting the home below the list price. That's great news. So it's good for everybody. And the question is, a lot of people want to know is, are the buyers winning? Are the sellers winning? What's happening in this marketplace? Who's coming out ahead? And the way we figure that out is based on what's called the absorption rate. So what is the absorption rate? It's the rate at which homes are being sold on the market, and that tells us what kind of market we are in. So let's take a look at the absorption rate for April 2018. So in April here, we've got 4,450 listings for sale that are active for sale at the end of April. Now, so that means if you have a property on the market, you have a 1 in 4,550 chance of getting sold. So that's you as a seller. Now, how many are actually selling? Well, in the month of April, we see that 1,283 units have sold. Just like we said here, 1,283 units sold in the month of April. So if we take that 4,550 number of units available, and they're selling at 1,283 units per month, if no new properties entered the market, how long would it take to clear out this 4,550 units? Well, it would take 3.5 months to clear out all that inventory. The 3.5 is our absorption rate. Now, how do we determine whether it's a seller's market, a buyer's market, or a balanced market? Well, we take a look at some numbers in terms of what does the guidelines tell us. Well, it's a seller's market if there's less than 3.5 months of inventory, if it takes less than 3.5 months to clear out the inventory. It's a buyer's market if it takes more than 5 months to clear out that inventory, a lot of inventory. And it's a balanced market if we're between 3 to 5 months of inventory. Well, right now we're at 3.5 months of inventory. So again, we're at a balanced market, which is where we were last month. But you can see at 3.5, we're really leaning towards a seller's market. We're balanced, but leaning towards seller's market. And that's why you're seeing this activity here with above or at list price for sales price. Now, how does this compare to last year? Are we on pace? Are we ahead of last year for absorption rate? A lot of people want to know what's happening in terms of the trend. So for 2017, we had 4,389 active units for sale. We had 1,300 units sale, pretty close there. And our months here, our absorption rate was 3.4 versus 3.5. So we're pretty much on par for where we were in April last year. And again, as I mentioned, last year's market was a pretty strong market. So I think what's happening here, if you take a look at the trends with days on market shrinking, and you take a look at all the other trends that I just went over, you'll understand that the market is starting to pick up. Things are looking great. I think as we get into the spring market, we're going to see a lot more activity, and we're going to see these numbers change. And I think we're going to see the market really, really strong here in Winnipeg. So I hope this information has been helpful for you. If you have anybody that you know that is thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, maybe yourself, a friend, or a family member, please consider Versace Real Estate. We would absolutely love to help you out in your real estate needs. And I hope this information has been helpful, and make it a great day. Take care.